Hi, it's Phoebe again. In this lesson, we'll learn about the word if and how to use it. I'm sure you've already come across it many times. People use it all the time. So what does if mean exactly? When we use if, we want to say that something may or may not happen depending on the conditions. That's why we call if a conditional. So let's look at some examples. If we play tennis, I will win. If you eat too much, you will get fat. In these examples, we use if to say that the first thing has to happen before the second one can happen. We could also add then to the sentence to show the relationship between playing and winning in the first example. If we play tennis, then I will win. Usually, the part of the sentence that starts with if comes at the front of the sentence. The part of the sentence with if is called the if clause or conditional clause. Let's find the conditional clauses in the following examples. If you pass the driving test, you may use my car. The conditional clause is if you pass the driving test. If you like, you can borrow my bicycle. The conditional clause is if you like. There are several ways of using a conditional. We use different forms for when we're absolutely sure that something will happen or when we're not absolutely certain. First of all, let's look at the case when you're absolutely certain that if one thing happens, then the other thing will happen also. We often use this to talk about things that are happening around us. They are part of reality or general rules. Here are some examples. If you go outside in the rain without an umbrella, you get wet. If you break your leg, you see a doctor. In sentences like these, you use the present simple in both the conditional clause and for the main verb of the sentence. In the first example, I said, you go and you get. In the second one, I used you break and you see. If you know about the present simple, this is quite simple, right? In these examples, you can also replace if with when. Usually, with general rules or statements about reality, you can use when instead of if. You can also use whenever, which means every time something happens. Here are the same examples, but with when and whenever. When you go outside in the rain without an umbrella, you get wet. Whenever you break your leg, you see a doctor. Okay, so we use the present simple for both verbs when we're certain that something will happen as a result of something. Now we'll look at a slightly different type of sentence. Here, I use a form of the auxiliary verb will in the second part of the sentence to predict that something happens in the future as a result of the first thing. If you take this medicine, you will soon feel better. If I go to England, I will stay there for 3 weeks. In these sentences, I predict that after the first thing happens, the second thing will very likely happen as a result of the first thing. Do you notice the difference with the first case of using if that I explained? Let's look at an example of each function and see what's different. If you are deaf, you can't hear. If you come early, we will have dinner together. The first example is a general rule. Deaf people don't hear. That's how it is. In the second sentence, I am saying something about the future. I am very sure that it will happen, but it is not always true. Coming home early doesn't always mean that we will have dinner together. On the other hand, being deaf always means you can't hear. Usually, we place the conditional clause at the front of the sentence. However, you can often put it at the end. Here are some examples. If we leave now, we will catch the bus. Or, we will catch the bus if we leave now. If it rains tonight, Andy will get wet. Or, Andy will get wet if it rains tonight. That's all for now. I will teach you more about conditionals in another lesson. Now you can try some of the exercises.